You might be asking yourself, Nick, why are you covering a B650E board so late into 2024? Well, that's because this board is another Gigabyte board that doesn't exist. This is the Gigabyte B650E AORUS Stealth ICE, and it has back connectors. We saw this one at Computex this year, and to be honest, I've wanted this board since I first saw it. It's been impossible to get, but here it is. Let's take a bit of a closer look at Gigabyte's. It's not their first back connector board, but it's their first new back connector board. Let's take a closer look. All right, here it is, ladies and gents, the Gigabyte B650E AORUS Stealth ICE. Let's get that motherboard out of the way so we can take a bit of a closer look at everything that comes with the board. First of all, we've got a set of SATA or SATA cables for your 2.5-inch SSDs or those good old 3.5-inch spinning RUS drives. There's also a whole bunch of documentation and a quick start guide so you can get yourself up and running really quickly. There's also this handy dandy little G connector. Essentially what this is for all of your cases wiring. You can plug all this into a single block in case your case has individual wires, and it just makes it a little bit easier to get yourself up and running. There's also the Wi-Fi antenna for the built-in Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4. The Wi-Fi controller on this board is a MediaTek Wi-Fi 7 controller, just in case you were interested. All right, it's time to unsheath the B650E AORUS Stealth ICE and take a bit of a look at what's on the board. Remember, guys, this is a back connector board, so all of the fun stuff is on the back of the board. Flipping that over, you can see that it's got a full cover back plate. As we've seen with other back connector motherboards from other motherboard manufacturers, the connectors for everything are around the outer edges of the board, and there's no connectors on the edge of the board that is closest to the I/O on the rear of the board. I hope this is all making sense to you guys, but yes, let's take a bit of a closer look at that I/O. On the bottom edge of the board, we've got a front panel audio header. There's a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB header. We also have a PWM fan header. There's a TPM header in case you wanted to use a TPM. There's two USB 2.0 headers, another PWM fan header. There's a reset button built onto the surface of the board. And then there's the front panel connector for all your lights and all your switches to turn on your system and to let you know your system is up and running. Along the other edge of the board, we've got a USB Type A front panel header. There's 4 SATA or SATA ports for your 2.5-inch SSDs or your 3.5-inch drives. We've got a 20 gig USB Type C front panel header. There's a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB header and a 4-pin 12-volt RGB header. There's an HDMI port, which is something that we're seeing more often with these boards. There's a PWM fan header, and then there's a 24-pin power connector to send juice to your Stealth ICE. Sounds like a drink, Stealth ICE. There's 3 more PWM fan headers along the top edge of the board, and then a single 8-pin EPS power connector to send juice to your Ryzen 7000, 8000, or 9000 CPU. In terms of PCIe layout, it's very simple here, guys. It's got a single PCIe Gen 5 by 16 slot. This is something that people aren't very happy about, but I will chat about this a bit later. Yes, a single PCIe slot on an ATX board. But that top slot does have a quick release button, and to be honest with the design of this board, I would say that this is required. As for the VRM layout, this board features a digital twin 12+2+2 phase VRM layout with a 6-layer PCB. The heat sinks here for the VRM are absolutely massive. You can see there's a huge heatsink along the top edge of the board. And then the entire I/O cover is a heatsink as well. And in between all of that, there are heat pipes that connect all of it. This is an AM5 board with the B650E chipset, and this does have a standard AM5 socket. But just in case you wanted to see what the inside of an AM5 socket looks like, in case you've never seen it before, this is exactly how it looks underneath without a CPU installed. For memory support, the Stealth ICE has 4 DDR5 DIMM slots with up to 256 gigs of 8000 mega transfers. Okay, let's take a look at some of the storage options here. All of the M.2 slots here have fully toolless access with toolless heat sinks. There's also this massive heat sink that helps to cool the chipset and the two M.2 slots underneath. As for the M.2 slots themselves, the one on the left, which has the PCIe Gen 5 label, is a PCIe Gen 5x4 M.2 slot, and the other two slots are PCIe Gen 4x4 slots. So even though that heatsink is so massive, because this is a B650E board, it doesn't have heaps of M.2 slots. Not that you'll probably need it, but you know, it is what it is. One thing to note with the Stealth ICE is you can see no screws on the motherboard at all, and it's covered by this magnet here. And if it looks familiar, that's because it is. It is quite literally a fridge magnet. Yep, that's right. AORUS is hiding all of the screw holes with a fridge magnet. Bonus points if you can figure out who's in that photo with me. They are pretty good disguises after all. For the rear I/O, we've got a Q flash button. We've got the antenna connectors for the built-in Wi-Fi 7 with the new connector that AORUS released at Computex for all of their boards. Basically, it's a single connector that just clips in without having to screw anything in. There's a mix of USB 2.0 Type A ports. There's also some 10 gig USB Type A ports. There's 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 2.1, USB Type C. There's a microphone input, a line output, as well as line input. All right, I hope you enjoyed this bit of an overview of the B650E AORUS Stealth ICE from Gigabyte. Now, here's the deal with Gigabyte's back connector boards. Gigabyte did back connectors before anybody. They were the first to do it, and then they weren't doing it at all, and then ASUS and MSI were like, hey, let's do this back connector thing again. And then Gigabyte said, you know what? We should do this back connector thing again, but let's follow the same layout that both MSI and ASUS have agreed to, because for case vendors, we're going to be able to be compatible with all of the cases that have back connector support. So this is a good move from Gigabyte, but like MSI, it doesn't have the one thing that I think ASUS is doing better than anyone for back connector boards, and that is there's no power for your GPU. So even though you can hide all of the cables for everything, the GPU cable for power will still be there, like the MSI stuff. But not really a big deal because, to be honest, as I mentioned, this board doesn't exist. I mean, it's listed for sale in the US and Australia, but the stock says sold out basically everywhere, unless I'm wrong, and by the time you watch this video, maybe it is available. The other thing that's really interesting about this board is a lot of the back connector boards we've seen from all other motherboard vendors have been Intel-based back connector boards. But this one, like MSI, is for AM5, which is quite nice. But it does feel a little bit strange that this board was announced so late into the life cycle of Ryzen 7000. And even, if I'm being honest, this board was announced around the same few days that Ryzen 9000 was announced. So they could have just held off and made this an X870 board or a B850E if that's going to be a thing. Yeah, it is a little bit strange, but I guess Gigabyte made this board because they could. And that's how motherboards go sometimes. They just make it because they can. In terms of the feature set, it's going to have one thing that I've seen already annoy a bunch of people that saw us take a look at this board at Computex, and that it's only got a single PCIe slot. It's for a good reason though. This is a B650E board. What are you going to do with an extra PCIe slot on this anyway? Being honest, what would you use that for? Because the reality is it's just going to be a graphics card at the end of the day. and nothing else. I'm not going to argue with you guys, but this is just what I see from a use case perspective. Lots of M.2 storage though, well, more than enough M.2 storage. But here's the thing, the price for this board is less than I thought it would be, because if you're interested in somehow buying the B650E AORUS Stealth ICE, you're looking at spending around $339 to $350 US, or around about 499 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. In Australia, this board is listed for sale, but there's no stock. So I have no idea how I have this board again. Isn't that a thing? Like, I don't like talking about stuff that you guys can't buy because it doesn't really make sense, but the truth is people have been asking us about this board so much. So it'd feel like a disservice to you guys to not show it here on the channel now that I've actually got one. Let us know your thoughts on the Stealth ICE, and let us know what you think is happening with back connector cases and stuff like that, because from what I've seen, people are either doing it or they're not. And for the most recent cases we've covered, they don't have back connector support. So yeah.